Hare Krishna, devotees. Welcome to day 42 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto. Day 42 on the 3rd Canto. And we are in chapter 14. Chapter 14 is titled, let me just check, Pregnancy of Deity in the Evening. What a story, isn't it? Amazing. And we're in we're in section, let me just check, section 3. Kasyapa agrees to conceive a child with deity despite the inauspicious time. And this section is from verse 16 to verse 32. And we are starting today on verse 28. And let us begin by chanting our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadesh Tarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya eva cha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Right, okay, so here we are then, chapter 14, and pregnancy of deity in the evening, and everything is just so inauspicious. And here is Kasyapa. Prabhupada actually says, we read, that actually he wants to do it. He's trying to say the right types of things, but part of him wants to engage in sex life, even though the time is wrong, and the likelihood of a bad child or children coming is very high. So, but what he's trying to do is sort of attempt at, I don't know, maybe you could say an attempt at convincing deity not to do it now, wait till a better time. But he's glorifying Lord Shiva to make the point that let's not offend him, we shouldn't offend him. All right, so verse 28. Unfortunate foolish persons, not knowing that he's engaged in his own self, laugh at him, Lord Shiva. Such foolish persons engage in maintaining the body, which is eatable by dogs, with dresses, ornaments, garlands, and ointments. Ointments meaning fragrant types of substances. So, okay, Srila Prabhupada gives fairly substantial purport here. Lord Shiva, he has nothing nice, no nice clothes, not a nice garland. He doesn't have nice jewelry, doesn't even have a house. And for transportation, he uses Nandi the bull, and bulls cannot fly, and they're not very fast. So, on the material level, and of course, what to speak of covering his body with the ashes of cremated bodies, living in crematoriums sometimes, and associating with ghosts and hobgoblins and other super tamasic, Prabhupada says devilish characters. Well, anyway. But as the verse says, as Kashyapa says, people who see him and they don't understand who he is, what his situation is, they may even laugh at him. Look at his situation. It's just so low class. But they don't understand. They really don't. So that's Lord Shiva. And that the people who may laugh at him, as the verse says, and Prabhupada explains in the purport, they're people who are addicted to decorating the body. And the body, of course, what about the body? The body is destined, the future of the body is to be eatable by dogs. But they're maintaining this dog food very luxuriously. And they don't understand him. But still, not all, certainly not those who laugh at him, but some people, even though he's living in such a state, still they approach him for luxuries. So in the purport here of chapter 14, verse 28, Srila Prabhupada makes the point, there are two types, two kinds of devotees of Shiva. Two kinds of people who worship him. You know, in a real sense, the term devotee is not really the right term, because devotee means someone who is devoted, selflessly devoted, in a mood of love. But these people are not. These two types. First type, Prabhupada explains, is gross materialists who just want bodily comforts. Give me a big house, big car, lots of money. And Lord Shiva does that. But they don't think that he's not living like that himself. So his opinion of these things which I'm asking for and which he's giving me, his opinion is they're useless waste of time. And then the second category, second kind of devotee of Lord Shiva, those wanting to become one with him, impersonalists. And they like to chant, Prabhupada says, Shivoham, I am Shiva. Or, after liberation, I shall become one with Lord Shiva. So, in other words, Prabhupada puts it, and it's very appropriate way of seeing it. In other words, those who are devotees or worshippers of Lord Shiva, they are mainly either karmis or jnanis. And karmis and jnanis, they are not appreciated from the perspective of Krishna consciousness. Yes, they cannot achieve pure devotional service. So they don't understand. They don't understand who is Lord Shiva, what is he doing, why is he doing, and all these things they don't understand. But sometimes, some of them, so-called devotees, Prabhupada refers to them here, of Lord Shiva, sometimes they imitate him by using poisonous intoxicants, like even something like marijuana. It's, nowadays in the Western world it's not taken very seriously, but actually it's poisonous because it corrupts the mind and places people in an illusory state of consciousness, and sometimes makes them extremely disturbed, actually. And it's interesting, this term we use, intoxicant, which includes marijuana and liquors, beer, wine, all these things, and what to speak of the heavy narcotics heroin, morphine, etc., etc. But even the relatively mild ones, they come under the heading intoxicant. And toxic means poisonous. And intoxicant means a poison you take into yourself or into your body. So, and Prabhupada gives the example, famous example, that Lord Shiva, to protect the universe, once swallowed an ocean of poison, and his throat became blue. Therefore he's known as Nilakanta, means blue-throated one. Yes, so it became blue because he held the poison in his throat. So Prabhupada would say, actually, that if they want to, these imitation Shivas want to follow in his footsteps by taking different intoxicants, Prabhupada makes the point that, not here but elsewhere, is that if you want to follow in his footsteps by taking intoxicants, first drink an ocean of poison. Then if you survive that, then you can take anything, it doesn't matter, because it's not going to affect you. If you survive drinking an ocean of poison, means and not be affected by the poison, you can take anything. It's not going to affect you. So they take these poisons and they just ruin themselves. They just ruin themselves. In the sense that, how are they going to make spiritual advancement? There's just no question. So actually, Lord Shiva's real purpose is to serve Krishna, and actually he would really prefer that he would like that nice clothes, garlands, ornaments, cosmetics be given to Krishna. Yeah, he doesn't want them for himself, and he doesn't take them for himself. He refuses to accept such luxurious items because they're all for Krishna. And therefore Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, however, since they do not know this purpose of Shiva, of Lord Shiva, foolish persons either laugh at him or profitlessly try to imitate him. We go on to verse 29. Demigods like Brahma also follow the religious rites observed by him, by Shiva. He is the controller of the material energy, which causes the creation of the material world. He is great, and therefore his devilish characteristics are simply imitation. So Lord Shiva, of course, is the husband of Durga, who is the controlling deity of material nature. So as her husband, he is the controller of the material energy. Yes. So he can tell Durga, he's the controller of his wife, Durga. Some people might think, well, that how could a husband be the controller of his wife? But that is the situation, that particularly when the husband is so glorious like Lord Shiva, the wife is very happy just to take shelter of him and do whatever he says, very humbly. So in that sense, he's the controller of Durga. But he's also the incarnation of the mode of ignorance. He's one of the guna avatars. He's a representative of the Supreme Lord, and in that sense, he's identical with the Lord. So he's very great, and his renunciation, extreme renunciation, is an ideal example of how we as devotees should be unattached. So therefore, Prabhupada says, one should therefore follow his example of detachment and not imitate his uncommon acts like taking poison. Verse 30, Maitreya said, Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmin sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. So, Prabhupada gives interesting little purport. The difference between a married wife and a public prostitute is that one, the married wife, is restrained in sex life by the rules and regulations of the scriptures, whereas the other, the prostitute, is unrestricted in sex life and conducted solely by the strong sex urge. So, unfortunately, though, Kasyapa, even though he's an enlivened person, he had just been he'd just done a fire sacrifice, and he had been in samadhi meditating on the impersonal absolute. So in a certain sense, he's very enlivened. But he became a victim, Prabhupada says, of his prostitute wife. Such is the strong force of material energy. As we mentioned yesterday a few times, he should have and he could have told her, no, we will wait till tomorrow, an auspicious time. But, as Prabhupada says, such is the strong force of material energy. Verse 31, understanding his wife's purpose, he was obliged to perform the forbidden act, and thus, after offering his obeisances unto worshipable fate, he lay with her in a secluded place. So, purport, Prabhupada makes the point, it appears Kasyapa was a worshipper of Shiva. Although he knew Shiva wouldn't be pleased, he was obliged by his wife's desire. So therefore he offered obeisances to fate, which is not going to really help that much. And he knew that the child, in fact 2 children, but probably at that point he's just assuming 1 child, the child who would come would not be good. But he couldn't protect himself or his wife because he was too obligated to his wife. And Prabhupada raises a very interesting, similar type of case. Haridas Thakur was tempted by a prostitute at night, but because of his advanced Krishna consciousness, he avoided being allured. That's the difference between a great devotee like Haridas Thakur and other people, and Kasyapa is one of the other people, worshipper of Lord Shiva, impersonal tendencies. So Kasyapa, anyway, Prabhupada makes the point, he knew all the rules and regulations, how to live, what to do, what not to do, but he couldn't protect himself from sex desire. Whereas Haridas Thakur, he was not born in a Brahmin family. Kasyapa's a Brahmin. Haridas Thakur was not born in a Brahmin family. He wasn't a Brahmin, but he was able to protect himself due to his Krishna consciousness because of his chanting. 32. Thereafter the Brahmin took his bath in the water and controlled his speech by practicing trance, meditating on the eternal effulgence and chanting the holy Gayatri mantras within his mouth. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that just like after using the toilet one has to bathe, similarly after sex life one has to bathe, especially if it's at a forbidden time. So then what did he do after taking bath? He meditated on the Brahmajyoti by chanting Gayatri. So he's an impersonalist. At least he's basically an impersonalist, put it that way. Yeah. So anyway, Prabhupada continues, when someone chants so that only he can hear, and then this was the case here, he chanted the Gayatri hymns within his mouth. He didn't express them audibly. So when someone chants so only he hears, that is japa. But when chanted loudly, it's kirtan. And the Hare Krishna mantra, of course, can be chanted in both ways. Therefore it's called the Maha Mantra. The great mantra, you can chant it to yourself, can chant it out loud in kirtan. Prabhupada continues with the second paragraph of the purport, and Prabhupada makes the point, Kasyapa Muni appears to be an impersonalist. And again, Prabhupada compares Kasyapa with Haridas Thakur, that it's clear that the personalist is stronger in sense control than the impersonalist. And this is actually explained in Bhagavad Gita also. Param Drishtva Navartate, it's chapter 2, verse 59, that when you engage in devotional service, you get a higher taste. And because of the higher taste, you can easily give up things which are of the lower taste. And sex life is definitely something from the lower taste category. Yes. And Prabhupada says, one ceases to accept lower grade things when one is situated in a superior condition. And Prabhupada makes interesting point that one is supposed to be purified after taking bath and chanting Gayatri, but the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, is so powerful that one can chant loudly or softly in any condition, even somehow or other, if not clean, if not purified. And one will be protected, Prabhupada says, from all the evils of material existence. And we go on to we go on to the next section, the fourth section, verse 33 to 36. Diti expresses remorse. Bit late. Anyway, she at least sort of comes to her senses to some degree and expresses remorse. Let us read the verses themselves. 33. O son of the Bharat family, Diti after this went nearer to her husband, her face lowered because of her faulty action. She spoke as follows. The beautiful Diti said, my dear Brahman, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him. 35. Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious great demigod, and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger can immediately move him to chastise. Verse 36. Let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He is also the worshipable Lord of all women. He is the personality of all opulences, and can show mercy towards women who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters. So, section 4, deity expresses remorse, verse 33 to 36. I'll go through them now with the purports. O son of the Bharat, this is 33, O son of the Bharat family, deity after this went nearer to her husband, her face lowered because of her faulty action. She spoke as follows. So Prabhupada makes the point, it's just a very short purport. When you become ashamed because of doing something bad, you become down-faced. Yeah. So she's like that, feeling very embarrassed. But at least she came to her senses. That sex life was not like the bona fide sex life between husband and wife, which Lord Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, kamosmi, that legitimate sex life for having a Krishna conscious child, Krishna says, it is me. But this sex life is condemned as prostitution. So Prabhupada concludes the short purport by saying, in other words, sex life with one's wife is equal to prostitution if the regulations are not properly followed, which obviously was the case there. Verse 34, the beautiful deity said, my dear Brahman, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him. So Prabhupada explains, deity, now she's come to her senses, more or less, or more at least than she was. Now she's conscious of her offense. She wants to be excused by Lord Shiva. And Prabhupada makes the point that Shiva has two names, Rudra and Ashutosh. Rudra means he's easily angered, and Ashutosh means he's easily pleased. So she's aware that Lord Shiva may spoil the pregnancy, like sort of cause a miscarriage type of thing. But she wanted Kashyapa to pacify Shiva, as he's a great devotee of Lord Shiva. As we just read, he is a devotee of Lord Shiva. So therefore she felt that Lord Shiva might be angry with her, but he wouldn't refuse Kashyapa's prayers because Kashyapa is his devotee or worshipper, whatever you'd call it. Okay. Anyway, you know what we would say, good luck. And it continues to be deity. Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious great demigod and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger can immediately move him to chastise. So anyway, Prabhupada explains, Deity is trying to be clever with Lord Shiva. Yes. It's not very good, actually. She thinks he can just be sort of talked into doing something, even if it's wrong. So she's saying, what's she saying? He can make me cry by aborting this child, or maybe giving me a child who's like just personified horrificness, like Hiranyaksha. What to speak of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So he can make me cry, but as Ashutosh, who's easily pleased, he can stop my crying. He's so great. If he wants, he can immediately destroy my pregnancy. But he's so merciful, he can fulfill it. He's all auspicious, completely auspicious. So it's easy for him to excuse me from punishment. Although she's assuming, and she's right, he's now ready to punish me because he's angry with me. And she says that he appears like a man, like just a male, a regular male, but actually he's the Lord of all men. And then verse 36, Deity says, let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He is also the worshipable Lord of all women. He is the personality of all opulences, and can show mercy towards women, who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters. And what to speak of great persons like Lord Shiva. Okay. So now, Deity is continuing to be clever, or try, by now she wants Sati to ask her husband, Lord Shiva, to excuse her. But she brings up an interesting point. It's an interesting point. Shiva is the worshipable Lord of all women. He's naturally very kind towards women. Yeah, and therefore it's said, in the Bhagavatam it says, that if a woman wants a good husband, she should worship Lord Shiva. It's in the Bhagavatam. So Shiva is naturally very kind towards women. And women are such that even the uncivilized hunters are merciful to women. And since Lord Shiva is associated with women, he knows very well their faulty natures. So therefore, she's hoping maybe he won't take my deviation seriously. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, every virgin girl is supposed to be a devotee of Lord Shiva. Deity remembered her childhood worship of Lord Shiva and begged his mercy. All right, so on we go, devotees. Next section is the 5th section, and it's from verse 37 to verse 41, and we call it Kasyapa explains what will happen to her children. Right, so Maitreya said, the great sage Kasyapa, or we have to read the verses. The great sage Kasyapa thus addressed his wife, who was trembling because of fear that her husband was offended. She understood that he had been dissuaded from his daily duties of offering evening prayers, yet she desired the welfare of her children in the world. 38. The learned Kasyapa said, because of your minds being polluted, because of defilement of the particular time, because of your negligence of my directions, and because of your being apathetic to the demigods, everything is inauspicious. Wow, Krishna. That's very heavy. That's very heavy. 39. O haughty one, you will have 2 contemptuous sons, born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the 3 worlds. Oh, Krishna. Verse 40. They will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. 41. At that time, the Lord of the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the well-wisher of all living entities, will descend and kill them, just as Indra smashes the mountains with his thunderbolts. So, let's go through with the purports. Verse 37 to 41, section 5. Kashyapa explains what will happen to her children. 37. Maitreya said, the great sage Kashyapa thus addressed his wife, who was trembling because of fear that her husband was offended. She understood that he had been dissuaded from his daily duties of offering evening prayers, yet she desired the welfare of her children in the world. There's no purport. Verse 38. The learned Kashyapa said, because of your minds being polluted, because of defilement of the particular time, because of your negligence of my directions, and because of your being apathetic to the demigods, everything was inauspicious. In other words, it could not be worse. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada begins by making an interesting point. There is, you could say, a formula for having good children. And that is, first of all, the husband should be disciplined in religious and regulative principles. And secondly, the wife should be faithful to the husband. Then, intercourse is a representation of Krishna consciousness. So, in other words, before engaging in conceiving a child, the husband and the wife must consider their states of mind, must consider the time, must consider the husband's direction, and there must be obedience to the demigods. And there's a time, there's actually a time, suitable, auspicious time for sex life, which is called the time for Garbhadan. Garbhadan. Garbha means, what does it mean? The womb or the fetus, like the baby or the womb. Dan means gift. A gift to the womb. A gift of a child to the womb. So Diti neglected all of these things, all of them. So although of course she wanted good children, but she wouldn't get good children. She wouldn't get children who were worthy to be sons of a Brahmin. Of course, not all children who are sons of a Brahmin are Brahmins. Like Ravana, his father is Vishrava, who's a Brahmin, Hiranyakashipu. also. But they're definitely not accepted as Brahmins, as their fathers didn't follow the regulations for their births. Therefore, they're actually called demons, or even Rakshasas, means cannibals. And Prabhupada makes an interesting point. Previously, in those ages, those times, there were only 1 or 2 demons or Rakshasas for that reason. But now in Kali Yuga, virtually all of them, all the children are demons or Rakshasas. And in Kali Yuga, how can we expect good children when these things are never done? Unwanted children, of course, cannot be a source of happiness in human society. But through the Krishna consciousness movement, they can be brought up to the human level by chanting. There is still hope even in Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, that is the unique contribution of Lord Chaitanya to human society, that he gave this chanting, which is so wonderful. It can even raise a demon or a Rakshasa to the human level of Krishna consciousness. Okay, verse 39. O haughty one, you will have 2 contemptuous sons born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the 3 worlds. So Srila Prabhupada begins the purport by saying that contemptuous sons are born of the condemned womb of their mother. The condemned womb comes first. And Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 verse 40, that when there's deliberate negligence of the regulative principles of religious life, the women as a class become polluted, and as a result, you get unwanted children like Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, classic case. So this is true especially for boys. If the mother is not good, good sons will not come. So Kasyapa could see what sons would come from the condemned womb of Diti. Her womb was condemned because she was too sexually inclined, and so she transgressed shastric laws. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in a society where such women are predominant, one should not expect good children. Verse 40, Kasyapa continues saying what bad children are going to come. They will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. 41. Well, okay. So, Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, demoniac activities are predominant when innocent, faultless living entities are killed, women are tortured, and the great souls engaged in Krishna consciousness are enraged. So, of course, in demoniac society, in modern-day Kali Yuga society, animals are killed to satisfy the tongue, and women are tortured by unnecessary sexual indulgence. So Prabhupada says, where there are women and meat, there must be liquor and sex indulgence. Yes, when these are prominent, by God's grace, there will be change in the social order by the Lord himself or by his bona fide representative. All right, so verse 41. At that time, the Lord of the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the well-wisher of all living entities, will descend and kill them, just as Indra smashes the mountains with his thunderbolts. Bhagavad Gita, of course, Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 8 talks of this. Paritranaya sadhusham vinashaya traduskritam. The Lord descends as an incarnation to deliver the devotees and kill the miscreants. So the Lord would come and kill them because they had offended the devotees of the Lord. And Prabhupada makes the point, there are many agents of the Lord, demigods, Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Durga, Kali, who can chastise such people. The example of a mountain being smashed by a thunderbolt is appropriate. Mountains are the strongest things, the strongest body, the most strongly built body within the universe is a mountain, but it can be smashed by the arrangement of the Lord. So the Lord doesn't need to come to destroy any strong body. So the demigods can do that. That's not a problem. So why does he come though? As he describes in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verse 8, he comes just for the devotees. Yeah. Otherwise everyone is subject to the miseries of material nature. But because the activities of the miscreants, killing innocent people and animals, torturing women, because these things are harmful to everyone and painful for the devotees, the Lord comes to relieve them. So ultimately then, he only comes for his devotees. Really, that's all. And his killing of the miscreants is his mercy on the miscreants. Although it may seem he takes the side of the devotee. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, since the Lord is absolute, there's no difference between his activities of killing the miscreants and favoring the devotees. Okay, so now we'll read verse 37 to 41. Kasyapa explains what will happen to her children. 37. Maitreya said, the great sage Kasyapa thus addressed his wife, who was trembling because of fear that her husband was offended. She understood that he had been dissuaded from his daily duties of offering evening prayers, yet she desired the welfare of her children in the world. 38. The learned Kasyapa said, because of your minds being polluted, because of defilement of the particular time, because of your negligence of my directions, and because of your being apathetic to the demigods, everything was inauspicious. 39. O haughty one, you will have 2 contemptuous sons born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the 3 worlds. 40. They will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. 41. At that time the Lord of the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the well-wisher of all living entities, will descend and kill them, just as Indra smashes the mountains with his thunderbolts. All right, so let us now go back and go through this whole section with the purports. Section 5, Kasyapa explains what will happen to her children, verse 37 to verse 41. All right, so now DT is the next section, verse 42 and 43. deity is happy that they'll be killed by the Lord and not by Lord Shiva. So let's just read straight through here. It's just 2 verses. 42. Deity said, "It is very good that my sons will be magnanimously killed by the arms of the personality of Godhead with his Sudarshan weapon. O my husband, may they never be killed by the wrath of the Brahmin devotees." So let's have a look at the purport. So when Diti thought that the Brahmins would be angry with her sons, she was anxious, thinking that the Brahmins might kill them, because the anger of the Brahmins, that is just too much. So, and Prabhupada makes the point that the Lord doesn't appear when the Brahmins become angry at someone, because the anger of the Brahmin is sufficient. But he does come when his devotees are sorry. Then the Lord comes. Actually, the devotee never prays for the Lord to come for the sake of the devotees if the demons are bothering him, but rather the Lord is anxious to protect the devotee. So Diti knew if the Lord killed her sons, it would be his mercy. So she says that his wheel and arms are magnanimous. If someone is killed by his chakra, and that person is fortunate enough to see the Lord's arms, that's sufficient for his liberation. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, such good fortune is not achieved even by the great sages. Verse 43, a person who is condemned by a Brahmin or is always fearful to other living entities is not favored either by those who are already in hell or by those in the species in which he is born. All right, so little purport, I'll just read the purport. A person who's condemned by a Brahmin or is always fearful to other living entities is not favored either by those who are already in hell or by those, excuse me, that was the verse. Here's the purport. A practical example of a condemned species of life is the dog. Dogs are so condemned that they never show any sympathy to their contemporaries. Okay, now the final section, from verse 44 to 51, Kasyapa tells about her grandson Prahlad. Okay, let's just have a look here. All right, I'll read the verses 44 to 45 there together. The learned Kashyapa said, because of your lamentation, penitence, and proper deliberation, and also because of your unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and your adoration for Lord Shiva and me, one of the sons, Prahlad, of your son, Hiranyakashipu, will be an approved devotee of the Lord, and his fame will be broadcast equally with that of the Personality of Godhead. 46. In order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. 47. Everyone will be pleased with him, because the Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller of the universe, is always satisfied with a devotee who does not wish for anything beyond him. 48. That topmost devotee of the Lord will have expanded intelligence and expanded influence, and will be the greatest of the great souls. Due to matured devotional service, he will certainly be situated in transcendental ecstasy and will enter the spiritual sky after quitting this material world. 49. He will be a virtuously qualified reservoir of all good qualities. He will be jolly and happy in others' happiness, distressed in others' distress, and will have no enemies. He'll be a destroyer of the lamentation of all the universes, like the pleasant moon after the summer sun. And verse 50, your grandson will be able to see inside and outside the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose wife is the beautiful goddess of fortune. The Lord can assume the form desired by the devotee, and his face is always beautifully decorated with earrings. 51. The sage Maitreya said, hearing that her grandson would be a great devotee, and that her sons would be killed by Krishna, Diti was highly pleased in mind. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so let's go through with the purports. We may go a little over time, but that's okay. 44 and 45. The learned Kashyapa said, because of your lamentation, penitence, and proper deliberation, and also because of your unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and your adoration for Lord Shiva and me, one of the sons, Prahlad, of your son, Hiranyakashipu, will be an approved devotee of the Lord, and his fame will be broadcast equally with that of the Personality of Godhead. There's no purport, so verse 46. In order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. So Prabhupada, in the purport, makes the point, first of all, yoga is based on self-control. In this way, one can become purified. Without self-control, you can't become free from animosity. All conditioned souls are envious of each other, but when they are liberated, the animosity is gone. So Prahlad was going to be tortured by his father, but after his father's death, he prayed to Krishna for his father's liberation by the Lord. And he didn't ask for anything for himself, only that his father might be liberated. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, he never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. Because his father did that. His father instigated people, torture him, hurt him, kill him. But Prahlad never felt animosity towards them. 47. Everyone will be pleased with him because the Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller of the universe, is always satisfied with a devotee who does not wish for anything beyond him. So, purport, the Lord as the super soul is everywhere, so he can dictate to anyone as he likes. And Diti's grandson Prahlad would be a great devotee. Everyone would like him because he'd have no vision other than the Lord. And the pure devotee sees the Lord everywhere. And the Lord then, as the super soul, reciprocates in such a way that all the living entities also like the devotee, because the Lord is in their hearts, and he dictates to them, be friendly to my devotee. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, there are many instances in history wherein even the most ferocious animal became friendly to a pure devotee of the Lord. 48. That topmost devotee of the Lord will have expanded intelligence and expanded influence, and will be the greatest of the great souls. Due to matured devotional service, he will certainly be situated in transcendental ecstasy and will enter the spiritual sky after quitting his material body. So Prabhupada, gosh, this is high level. Prabhupada in the purport talks about 3 stages on the highest level of transcendental devotional service. One is what is called these are three bhavas, 3 ecstasies. Sthayi bhava means continual perfect love of God, means the particular rasa. Then anubhava, love in a particular relationship, and then mahabhava, which is visible among the personal pleasure potency energies of the Lord. So Prahlad was going to constantly meditate on the Lord, recite his pastimes. Because he would always be meditating like this, he'd easily go back to Godhead at the end of his life. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, such meditation is still more conveniently performed by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord. This is especially recommended in this age of Kali. 49. He will be a virtuously qualified reservoir of all good qualities. He will be jolly and happy in others' happiness, distressed in others' distress, and will have no enemies. He'll be a destroyer of the lamentation of all the universes, like a pleasant moon after the summer sun. So Prabhupada explains, it was going to have all the good qualities humanly possible that it's possible for anyone to have. He would be an emperor, but he would not be licentious. He wouldn't be a big enjoyer. From childhood, he'd be a reservoir of all good qualities, and this is a sign of a pure devotee. And Prabhupada makes interesting point that the most important quality, characteristic of a pure devotee is that he is not lampata or licentious, meaning heavily inclined towards sense gratification. Another quality, he's eager to mitigate the miseries of the people. And what is the most, Prabhupada says, the most obnoxious misery of a living entity? His forgetfulness of Krishna. So therefore, a pure devotee always tries to evoke everyone's Krishna consciousness, which is the panacea for all miseries. And I'm just going to cover devotees the next 2 verses, and that'll be it. 50. Your grandson will be able to see inside and outside the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose wife is the beautiful goddess of fortune. The Lord can assume the form desired by the devotee, and his face is always beautifully decorated with earrings. So therefore, Prabhupada says it's predicted that not only would Prahlad see the Lord in meditation, but with his own eyes. And this is possible only for the most advanced. Yeah. Otherwise he can't be seen with material eyes. So the Lord has many forms, and the devotee becomes attached to one of them, and then the Lord appears to the devotee in that form. So the devotee doesn't imagine something whimsical, that maybe, some imaginary form of the Lord, only authentic forms, and he doesn't think of the Lord as being impersonal. Yeah. But the Lord just Yeah. And the Lord does not assume the form that a non-devotee may like. Non-devotees have no idea of forms of the Lord, so they cannot think of any of the genuine forms. There's a whole lot of them listed there, Krishna, Balaram, Sankarshan, etc. The non-devotees can't think of them. But Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, but whenever a devotee sees the Lord, he sees him in a most beautifully decorated form, accompanied by his constant companion, the goddess of fortune, who is eternally beautiful. And finally, verse 51, the sage Maitreya said, hearing that her grandson would be a great devotee, and that her sons would be killed by Krishna, Diti was highly pleased in mind. So, okay, let's just have a look at the purport, final purport. Diti was not happy that her sons, because of the faults, her untimely pregnancy, she was not happy her sons would be demons and fight with the Lord. But when she heard her grandson would be a great devotee and her two sons would be killed by the Lord, she was satisfied. And as the wife of sage and the daughter of a Prajapati, she knew it's advantageous to be killed by the Lord, because she knew the Lord's acts of violence and non-violence are non-different. They're both absolute, not like mundane violence and non-violence. So therefore the demon the Lord kills gets the same result as one who gets liberation after many births of austerity. And Prabhupada concludes the purport and the chapter by saying, the word brisham is significant herein because it indicates that Diti was pleased beyond her expectations. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.